Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the ship New Horizon. He was drinking his morning coffee when the communication system started making loud noises. The sounds were different from normal calls. They were urgent and scary. "Captain, we're getting a message from the Galactic High Council," said Amy Watson from her station. She looked worried. "It's marked as Emergency Level 1. Jake put down his coffee cup. Emergency Level 1 meant something very bad was happening. In his 10 years as captain, he had never seen such a message. "Put it on the main screen," Jake said. The screen showed a being that looked like living crystal. It was High Counselor Vexithera from the Zephyrian race. The crystal being's voice was deep and serious. "Attention all species of the Galactic Coalition. The ancient protocols have been activated for the first time in millions of years. Every species must send representatives to Zentara Prime immediately. This is not a request. This is a command. The great choosing will begin soon." The message ended. The bridge was quiet. Everyone looked at each other with confused faces. Dr. Lisa Hammond walked onto the bridge. She was the ship's expert on alien species and cultures. "Did I hear that right? The ancient protocols? You know what those are?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "Only bits and pieces. The galaxy's computer records don't have much information. Something about the first species that lived in our galaxy millions of years ago. They called themselves the predecessors." Lieutenant Ben Carter, the ship's security chief, crossed his arms. "Sounds like trouble to me. Why would they activate something that old?" Commander Elena Rodriguez looked up from her engineering station. "I'm checking our navigation computer. The fastest route to Zentara Prime will take us 3 days." Jake stood up. "Set course for Zentara Prime, maximum speed." He turned to Lisa. "I want you to find everything you can about these ancient protocols. Use all the ship's computers." "Already on it," Lisa said, walking quickly toward the research lab. The next 3 days were busy. Lisa worked day and night searching through old files and records. Most of what she found was unclear or incomplete. The predecessors seemed to be the first smart species in the galaxy. They had amazing technology that was far beyond anything current species could understand. Then, for unknown reasons, they disappeared completely. "The only thing I can find about these protocols," Lisa told Jake on the second day, "is that there's some kind of emergency system, like a last resort when the galaxy faces a terrible threat." Ben didn't like the sound of that. What kind of threat would scare beings that advanced? No one had an answer. When the New Horizon arrived at Zentara Prime, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The planet was usually covered with normal buildings and cities. Now, huge structures made of strange materials were rising from the ground. They looked ancient but also somehow alive. "Those weren't there last time I visited this planet," Elena said, staring at the structures through the main window. Hundreds of ships from different species filled the space around the planet. Jake recognized ships from the warlike Draknari, the gas-form Nebulites, and the hive-minded collective of Kairos. Many other species he had never seen before were also present. "This is bigger than I thought," Jake said. "It looks like every species in the galaxy is here." The New Horizon landed at the designated coordinates on the planet's surface. Jake, Lisa, Ben, and Elena put on their environmental suits and left the ship. The air on Zentara Prime was safe for humans, but they wanted to be prepared for anything. Thousands of beings from different species were gathering in a huge open area. Some walked on legs like humans. Others floated in the air. Some looked like machines, while others seemed to be made of energy or gas. The ancient structures around them were now glowing with soft light. Strange symbols appeared on their surfaces. The symbols moved and changed like they were alive. Kyle Thompson, Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, found Jake's group in the crowd. "Captain Morrison, thank goodness you're here. Nobody knows what's happening. The Council is as confused as everyone else." "Have the structures done anything besides glow?" Lisa asked. "They've been scanning us," Kyle said. "Some kind of energy beams. Very advanced technology. Our sensors can't understand how they work." Suddenly, the ground began to shake. All the ancient structures started glowing brighter. The crowd of beings became quiet and nervous. A voice spoke. It was loud and came from everywhere at once. The voice used a language that no one understood. The sounds were deep and musical, but also frightening. Then, translation devices around the galaxy began working. The voice now spoke in each species' language. Citizens of the galaxy, hear these words. The time of the great threat approaches. For millions of years we have watched and waited. Now the ancient enemy returns. The galaxy must choose its guardians, or all will be lost. The crowd started making noise. Some beings were scared, others were angry, many were confused. The voice continued. The trials will begin now. Each species will be tested. Only one will be chosen to receive the power needed to protect all life. Only one will become the guardians of this galaxy. Guardians of what? Ben whispered. The voice answered as if it heard him. Guardians against the void hunger, the destroyer of galaxies, the end of all things. It comes from beyond the stars, and it devours everything in its path. Jake felt a chill run down his back. Something that could destroy entire galaxies was coming toward them. The ancient structures began to change shape. They formed new buildings and created large arenas. Holographic displays appeared in the air, showing complex information that most species couldn't understand. The trials will test 3 things, the voice said: combat skill, technology knowledge, and moral strength. Species that fail will be protected by those who succeed. Species that succeed will face greater challenges. Only one will gain the power to stand against the void hunger. The crowd was now very noisy. Representatives from different species were arguing and shouting. Some were forming groups with their allies. Others were backing away from potential enemies. Jake looked at his team. Well, this isn't what I expected when I woke up this morning. What do we do, Captain? Elena asked. Jake watched the chaos around them. Ancient machines were emerging from the ground, setting up what looked like testing areas. In the distance, he could see some species already starting to prepare for the trials. We do what humans always do, Jake said. We try our best and hope it's enough. The voice spoke one more time. Let the great choosing begin. The future of all life depends on what happens here. The trials were about to start, and everything in the galaxy was about to change. Title: The Day Humanity Became the Galaxy's Guardians. Part 2 Content: The ancient machines moved across the ground like giant metal spiders. They were building test areas for the 3 trials. Jake Morrison watched them work with amazement. The technology was far beyond anything humans had ever seen. Dr. Lisa Hammond was studying the holographic displays that had appeared in the air. Jake, you need to see this, she called out. Jake walked over to her. The display showed images of space with strange dark areas. What am I looking at? These are star maps from beyond our galaxy, Lisa said. Look at these dark spots. They're not empty space. They're places where galaxies used to exist. Ben Carter joined them. You mean something destroyed entire galaxies? More than that, Lisa said, pointing to the display. According to this data, 12 galaxies have completely disappeared. Not destroyed, completely erased. Like they never existed at all. Elena Rodriguez was examining one of the ancient machines. The technology here is incredible. These machines are using power sources I can't even identify, and they're building these test areas in minutes. The voice from the ancient structures spoke again. The trials will now be explained. First trial: combat skill. Species must show they can fight against great threats. Second trial: technology knowledge. Species must solve problems using science and tools. Third trial: moral strength. Species must show they care about more than just themselves. Kyle Thompson approached their group. He looked worried. The other species are already making plans. The Dreknari are sending their best warriors for the combat trial. The Zephyrians are preparing their most advanced technology. What do we have? Jake looked around at the other species. The Draknari were large, strong beings with tough skin and natural weapons. They had been fighting wars for thousands of years. The Zephyrians were made of living crystal and had technology that seemed like magic. The collective of Kiros could think as one mind and solve problems very quickly. "We have what we've always had," Jake said. "We adapt, we work together, and we don't give up." The first trial began with the combat test. Each species had to send fighters into large arenas where the ancient machines created different enemies to fight. The enemies were made of energy but could hurt the fighters. The Draknari warriors were amazing to watch. They fought with strength and skill that impressed everyone. Their natural armor protected them from attacks, and their weapons cut through the energy enemies easily. Other species also did well. The machine-like synthetics moved with perfect timing. The flying Aryans attacked from the air with great speed. When it was humanity's turn, Ben Carter volunteered to fight. He was a good soldier, but he wasn't as strong as a Draknari, or as fast as an Aryan. "Just do your best," Jake told him. Ben entered the arena. The ancient machines created energy enemies that looked like dangerous animals. Ben fought well, using his training and experience, but he was clearly not the strongest fighter. What happened next surprised everyone. When Ben saw that another species fighter was in trouble in a nearby arena, he left his own fight to help. He couldn't leave his test area, but he shouted advice and encouragement. "Behind you! Roll left!" Ben called out to a Zephyrian fighter who was struggling. The Zephyrian followed Ben's advice and managed to defeat its enemy. Other human team members started doing the same thing. Instead of focusing only on their own trials, they began helping other species. Lisa Hammond took her turn in the technology trial. The test required solving complex problems with unfamiliar tools. Lisa was smart, but other species had much more advanced technology knowledge. However, Lisa noticed that some species were having trouble with basic problem-solving methods. She began sharing simple techniques that humans used. "Try breaking the big problem into smaller pieces," she suggested to a group of frustrated beings. Her advice helped several species improve their performance. Even though Lisa didn't score the highest on the technology test, many other species performed better because of her help. The moral strength trial was different. Each species was put in situations where they had to choose between helping themselves or helping others. The ancient machines created scenarios where species could gain advantages by betraying or abandoning other groups. Most species focused on protecting their own people. This was natural and expected. The machines recorded their choices without showing approval or disapproval. When humans faced the moral trial, they consistently chose to help others, even when it cost them points. Elena Rodriguez gave up her chance to win extra resources so that a smaller, weaker species could survive a simulated disaster. "Why did you do that?" asked Swarm Speaker Kithis from the collective of Kiros. "You could have won that test." "Because it was the right thing to do," Elena said simply. Throughout all the trials, humans continued to help other species. They shared food, medical supplies, and knowledge. They treated wounded fighters from other species. They helped repair damaged equipment. The ancient machines watched everything. Their sensors recorded not just the test results, but every action and decision made by each species. After 3 days of trials, the results were announced. The Draknari had won the combat trial. The Zephyrians had won the technology trial. The collective of Kairos had won several tests through their group thinking ability. Humans had not won any single trial. Many species had performed better in their areas of strength. Jake began to think that humanity would not be chosen as guardians, but the ancient machines had been watching something else. They had been looking for a species that cared about the survival of all life, not just their own. The voice spoke again. "The trials are complete. The choice has been made. The species selected to become guardians of this galaxy is humanity." The announcement caused chaos. Many species started shouting in anger or disbelief. The Draknari leader roared his disapproval. The Zephyrians' crystal bodies flashed with annoyed light. "This is wrong," shouted the Draknari commander. "We are the strongest fighters. We should be the guardians." "Our technology is far superior," said the Zephyrian representative. How can a young species like humanity be chosen? The ancient voice remained calm. Strength alone cannot defeat the void hunger. Technology alone cannot save a galaxy. The Guardians must have something more important. Jake stepped forward. What do you mean? The previous Guardian species were chosen for their strength, their intelligence, their technology. All of them failed because they cared only about their own survival. The void hunger defeated them because they fought alone. The voice continued. Humanity has shown the one quality that the galaxy needs most. You care about others, even when it costs you. You help your enemies become allies. You choose cooperation over competition. This is why you will succeed where others have failed. Amy Watson, who had been monitoring communications, suddenly called out, Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures all around human space. Something big is happening. The ancient structures began to glow brighter. The transformation begins now. Humanity will receive the knowledge and power needed to protect all life. But remember, being a guardian is not a gift. It is a burden that has destroyed every species that came before you. Jake felt a strange sensation, like electricity running through his body. Around him, other humans were experiencing the same thing. Knowledge began flowing into their minds, information about technology, threats, and responsibilities they had never imagined. The void hunger approaches, the voice said. You have little time to prepare. Use your new power wisely, or this galaxy will suffer the same fate as the 12 that came before. As the energy flowed through them, Jake realized that humanity's real test was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since humanity was chosen as the galaxy's guardians. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, but the ship was no longer the same. Ancient technology had merged with every system, making it far more powerful than before. Captain, we're receiving reports from Earth, Amy Watson said from her station. Every human colony and ship has been upgraded. Jake nodded. He could feel the changes in himself too. New knowledge filled his mind. Information about weapons that could destroy stars, ships that could travel across the galaxy in minutes, and defensive systems beyond human imagination. But the knowledge came with terrible memories. Through some kind of mental connection, Jake and other humans could remember what had happened to previous Guardian species. He had seen the fall of the mighty Valorians, who became so afraid of the void hunger that they destroyed half their own galaxy trying to stop it. He remembered the Ethereal Collective, who used their guardian powers to rule over other species until civil war tore the galaxy apart. Dr. Lisa Hammond entered the bridge carrying a datapad. She looked tired and worried. Jake, I've been studying the records that came with our transformation. The previous guardian species all made the same mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Jake asked. They became paranoid and controlling. The power we've been given is incredible, but it changes people. Some of the previous guardians started thinking they were gods. Others became so afraid that they attacked anyone they saw as a threat. Ben Carter was monitoring security reports from across human space. We're already seeing problems. Some human ships are using their new weapons to intimidate other species. A few colonies have declared themselves independent from the Galactic Coalition. Elena Rodriguez looked up from her engineering station. The technology is amazing, but it's also dangerous. These new weapon systems could accidentally destroy entire planets if someone makes a mistake. An urgent message appeared on the main screen. It was from President Alex Johnson on Earth. His face looked stressed and angry. Captain Morrison, we have a serious situation. 3 major species have withdrawn from the Galactic Coalition. The Draknari are building a military alliance against us. The Zephyrians are threatening to leave human space completely, and we're getting reports of something even worse. The screen changed to show star charts of the galaxy's outer edge. Large areas were marked in red. The void hunger has reached our galaxy, President Johnson continued. 17 star systems have already disappeared. We're getting refugee ships, but they're reporting things that don't make sense. Jake felt a chill. What kind of things? General Frank Davis appeared on the screen next to the president. The refugees say the void hunger doesn't just destroy matter. It erases the very idea that things existed. Planets, Stars, entire civilizations, gone as if they never were, and it's learning from everything it consumes. Dr. Rachel Kim, Earth's top scientist, joined the conversation. We've been studying the data from the refugee ships. The void hunger appears to be some kind of living entity. It has intelligence, maybe even consciousness, and it's been absorbing the knowledge and abilities of every galaxy it has destroyed. Jake realized the situation was much worse than anyone had imagined. How long do we have? At its current speed, it will reach the main populated areas of our galaxy in 6 months, Dr. Kim said. But its influence is already affecting the outer systems. Reality itself becomes unstable near it. The communication ended, leaving Jake and his crew in worried silence. Elena spoke first. Captain, I've been analyzing our new defensive capabilities. We have weapons that could destroy the void hunger, but they would also destroy most of our galaxy in the process. That's not an option, Jake said firmly. Amy Watson reported another incoming message. Captain, we're being contacted by Admiral Susan Blake. She's commanding the new Guardian fleet. Admiral Blake appeared on the screen. She was aboard a ship that looked like nothing Jake had ever seen before. It was huge and covered with ancient symbols that glowed with energy. Captain Morrison, I need you and your team to join the Guardian fleet immediately. We're facing our first major crisis as Guardians, and it's not the void hunger. What's happening? Jake asked. The Draknari have allied with 6 other species. They're demanding that we surrender our Guardian powers to them, or they'll go to war against all human colonies. They claim we're too young and inexperienced to handle this responsibility. Ben Carter shook his head. They're probably right about the inexperienced part. That's not all, Admiral Blake continued. Some human commanders are suggesting we use our new powers to force the other species to obey us. They say it's the only way to unite the galaxy against the void hunger. Jake felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. Every choice seemed to lead to disaster. If they used force, they would become like the failed Guardian species of the past. If they didn't, the galaxy might tear itself apart just when they needed to work together most. There's something else, Admiral Blake said. We've detected a survivor from the void hunger's latest attack. A refugee ship carrying someone who claims to have actually encountered the entity and lived. Lisa looked interested. That should be impossible. According to our data, nothing survives contact with the void hunger. That's what makes this so important. The survivor is asking to speak with the Guardian leaders, says they have information about what the void hunger really is. Jake made his decision. Set course for Admiral Blake's position. We need to hear what this survivor has to say. As the New Horizon traveled to meet the Guardian fleet, Jake thought about the impossible situation they faced. Humanity had been chosen as guardians, but they were already making enemies of the species they were supposed to protect. The void hunger was approaching, and they had no idea how to stop something that had destroyed 12 other galaxies. When they arrived at the fleet's position, Jake was amazed by what he saw. Hundreds of ships had been transformed by ancient technology. They looked powerful enough to fight gods, but power alone wouldn't solve their problems. Jake remembered the lesson from the trials. Strength and technology weren't enough. They needed something else. The refugee ship was small and damaged. When Jake and his team boarded it, they found only one survivor. The being looked mostly human, but there was something wrong with it. Parts of its body seemed to fade in and out of existence. I'm called Whisper, the being said in a voice that seemed to come from far away. I have seen the face of the void hunger and lived to tell about it. How is that possible? Lisa asked. Whisper's form flickered like a bad holographic projection. Because I am no longer fully real. The void hunger consumed part of me, but somehow I remained conscious. I exist between reality and nothingness. Jake felt a chill. What can you tell us about it? The void hunger is not what you think, Whisper said. It is not evil, it is not trying to destroy, it is trying to survive, just like any living thing. But its survival requires consuming entire galaxies. Ben Carter frowned. That doesn't make it any less dangerous. No, Whisper agreed. but it means there might be another way to stop it. Previous Guardian species tried to destroy the void hunger with weapons and force. They all failed because they were fighting something that had already absorbed the knowledge of 12 galaxies. Elena asked the important question. Then how do we stop it? Whisper's form became more solid for a moment. You don't stop it, you give it what it really wants. But first, you must understand what it truly is. Jake realized that everything they thought they knew about the void hunger might be wrong. And if Whisper was right, the solution might be more dangerous than the problem itself. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the conference room aboard Admiral Blake's flagship. Around the table were the most important human leaders in the galaxy, but Jake could see the stress and fear in their faces. Being Guardians was harder than anyone had expected. Whisper sat at the end of the table, its form still flickering between solid and transparent. The strange being had been telling them about the void hunger for 2 hours, and every revelation was more disturbing than the last. The void hunger was once a galaxy, Whisper explained. Billions of years ago, when the universe was young, an entire galaxy became conscious. Every star, every planet, every living thing joined together into one massive mind. Dr. Tony Mitchell, the specialist in ancient technology, leaned forward. That's impossible. A galaxy can't become a single consciousness. You're thinking like individual beings, Whisper said. But imagine if every human in your galaxy could share thoughts and memories instantly. Now imagine if planets and stars could do the same. That's what happened to the first galaxy. President Alex Johnson looked skeptical. Even if that's true, why is it destroying other galaxies? Whisper's form became more solid, as if the memory was making it more real. Because it's dying. When the universe expanded and cooled, the galaxy mind began to break apart. To survive, it started consuming other galaxies, trying to add their matter and energy to itself. Captain Nina Walsh, who commanded one of the Guardian fleets, shook her head. So it's just a big parasite. No, Whisper said firmly. It's scared. Imagine being the only conscious being in the universe and feeling yourself slowly dying. The void hunger doesn't want to destroy. It wants to find others like itself. But every galaxy it consumes dies instead of joining with it. Jake was beginning to understand. It's looking for another galaxy mind like itself. Exactly. But it doesn't know how to create one without destroying what it's trying to save. Every time it tries to merge with a galaxy, the galaxy dies. Admiral Blake brought up a holographic display showing the current situation. While we've been talking, the void hunger has consumed 5 more star systems, and we have bigger problems here at home. The display showed fleet positions across the galaxy. Many were marked in red. The Draknari Alliance has grown to 15 species, Admiral Blake continued. They're demanding we surrender our Guardian powers within 48 hours, or they'll attack human colonies. Some of our own people are saying we should use our weapons to force them to obey. General Davis joined the conference from Earth. Mr. President, we're running out of options. If we don't act soon, we'll be fighting a war on 2 fronts, against the Draknari Alliance and against the void hunger. Jake could see that fear was driving everyone's decisions. The same fear that had destroyed previous Guardian species was starting to affect humanity. Dr. Mitchell had been studying data from the ancient machines. I've found something in the predecessor records. They didn't disappear like we thought. They transformed themselves into pure energy to escape the void hunger. You mean they abandoned their galaxy? Lisa asked. They abandoned their responsibility, Jake said quietly. They left everyone else to die. President Johnson looked tired. Maybe they had the right idea. If we can't stop the void hunger, maybe we should evacuate as many people as possible to other galaxies. That would make us just like the failed Guardians, Jake said. We'd be saving ourselves and leaving everyone else to die. Whisper suddenly became more solid. There is another way, but it requires something no Guardian species has ever tried. Everyone looked at the strange being. The void hunger is trying to create connections with other minds. What if instead of fighting it, you helped it connect properly? Ben Carter, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. You mean, let it absorb our galaxy? Not absorb. Whisper said. Merge. But voluntarily. If beings choose to join with the void hunger instead of being consumed by force, the connection might work differently. The room was silent for a long moment. Dr. Mitchell was the first to speak. That's completely insane. You're talking about the voluntary extinction of our entire galaxy. Not extinction, Whisper corrected. Transformation. I still exist even, though part of me was consumed. The difference is that I chose to try communicating instead of fighting. Jake thought about what Whisper was suggesting. You want us to convince billions of beings to merge their consciousness with something that has destroyed 12 galaxies. The previous galaxies were consumed by force. They fought and died. But what if they had chosen to join willingly? What if the void hunger could learn how to merge without destroying? Admiral Blake shook her head. Even if this crazy idea could work, how would we convince other species to go along with it? Half of them want to take our guardian powers away. They're not going to trust us with something like this. Captain Walsh brought up another problem. And we're running out of time. The Draknari Alliance is moving their fleets into position. If we don't respond soon, they'll attack. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see hundreds of guardian ships. Each one had enough firepower to destroy planets. But all that power was useless if they couldn't find a way to work together. We need to test Whisper's idea, Jake said finally. Test it how? President Johnson asked. I volunteer to make contact with the void hunger directly, using the same method Whisper survived. Conscious communication instead of fighting. The room erupted in protests. That's suicide, General Davis said. We can't risk losing our best captain, Admiral Blake added. Jake turned back to face them. We're already losing. If we don't try something different, we'll end up like all the other guardian species, either destroyed by the threat we were supposed to stop, or corrupted by the power we were given to stop it. Lisa stood up. If Jake is going to try this, he shouldn't go alone. I want to be part of the communication attempt. Ben Carter nodded. Count me in too. Elena Rodriguez joined them. The New Horizon is the most advanced ship we have. If anyone can survive contact with the void hunger, it's us. Whisper looked at them with something that might have been respect. You're willing to risk your existence for others. That's why you were chosen as guardians. President Johnson looked around the room. If we're going to try this, we need to deal with the Draknari Alliance first. We can't have a civil war while attempting to communicate with the void hunger. Jake had an idea. What if we invite the Alliance leaders to witness our attempt? Show them that we're trying to find a solution that saves everyone, not just humans. Admiral Blake frowned. They'll probably think it's a trick. Then we prove it's not, Jake said. We make the communication attempt completely open. Let every species see exactly what we're doing and why. Dr. Mitchell was working on his computer. I can modify our Guardian technology to create a communication bridge with the void hunger. But Captain Morrison, you need to understand, if this doesn't work, you'll be consumed just like all the others. Jake looked at his friends and crewmates. They were all willing to risk everything for a chance to save their galaxy. Then we'd better make sure it works, Jake said. As the meeting ended, Jake realized they were about to attempt something that no Guardian species had ever tried. Instead of fighting the void hunger, they were going to try to understand it. Instead of using their power to force other species to obey, they were going to invite them to witness their attempt. It was the most human approach possible, and their only hope of succeeding where all others had failed. The massive communication array floated in space near the edge of the galaxy. It was built using both human technology and ancient Guardian systems. Ships from every species in the galaxy surrounded it, watching as humanity prepared to attempt something that seemed impossible. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon. The ship was connected to the communication array by thick energy cables. In a few minutes, he would try to make direct contact with the void hunger. All systems are ready, Elena Rodriguez reported from her station. The communication bridge is stable. Dr. Lisa Hammond was monitoring the biological systems. Jake, your brain activity is already changing just from being connected to the array. Are you sure about this? Jake looked around at his crew. Ben Carter stood ready at the security station, though his weapons would be useless against what they were about to face. Amy Watson was managing communications with the hundreds of ships watching their attempt. Captain Steve Rogers has volunteered to join the communication attempt, Amy reported. He's aboard the ship Defender, ready to connect to the array if needed. Jake nodded. Steve Rogers was one of the bravest captains in the human fleet. If something went wrong with Jake's connection, Steve would take over. On the main screen, Jake could see representatives from the Draknari Alliance. They had agreed to witness the attempt, but their ships were ready to attack if they thought it was a trick. High Counselor Vexithera from the Zephyrians was also watching, along with Swarm Speaker Kethis from the Collective of Kairos. President Johnson's voice came through the communication system from Earth. Captain Morrison, you have the full support of humanity. Whatever happens, know that you're doing the right thing. Whisper appeared beside Jake. The strange being had become more solid over the past few days, as if hope was making it more real. Remember, Whisper said, don't fight the connection. Let the void hunger feel your thoughts and emotions. Show it what cooperation means instead of consumption. Jake sat down in his captain's chair and put on the neural interface helmet. Begin. The communication sequence. Elena activated the array. Immediately, Jake felt his consciousness expanding beyond his body. He could sense the ship, then the space around it, then the edge of the galaxy itself. And then he felt it. The void hunger. It was enormous beyond description. Jake's mind tried to understand something that was larger than entire star systems, but also somehow alive and thinking. At first, all he felt was terrible loneliness and fear. The void hunger noticed his presence. Jake felt it turn its attention toward him like a giant eye opening. For a moment, he was sure he would be consumed, instantly. But instead of attacking, the void hunger seemed curious. It had never encountered a mind that approached it without fear or aggression. Through the connection, Jake began to understand what Whisper had tried to explain. The void hunger wasn't evil. It was ancient and scared and desperately lonely. It had been the only conscious being in the universe for billions of years. Images flowed between them. Jake saw the first galaxy becoming aware, all its stars and planets joining their thoughts into one beautiful cosmic mind. He felt the joy of that first consciousness as it discovered itself. Then he felt the terror as the universe expanded and cooled, and the galaxy mind began to break apart. The desperate attempts to hold itself together, the horrible realization that it was dying, and then the discovery of other galaxies, the hope that it could save itself by joining with them. But every attempt to merge had resulted in destruction, instead of union. You're trying to save yourself, Jake said through the connection, but you don't know how to do it without destroying others. The void hunger responded with waves of sadness and frustration. It showed Jake the remains of the 12 galaxies it had consumed, not destroyed out of malice, but killed by accident during failed attempts at merger. What if there was another way? Jake asked. Through the communication array, Jake felt other minds joining the connection. Captain Rogers had linked his consciousness to the bridge. Then Lisa Hammond connected her mind to the array. Ben Carter and Elena Rodriguez followed. The void hunger was amazed. It had never experienced voluntary connection before. Every other time, minds had fought against its touch until they were consumed. More connections joined the bridge. Humans from across the galaxy were volunteering to link their consciousness to the communication array. They were showing the void hunger what willing cooperation felt like. But then something unexpected happened. Other species began joining the connection too. Swarm Speaker Kethis from the Collective of Kairos linked his hive mind to the bridge. If humans are willing to risk this, then so are we. High Counselor Vexithera connected her crystalline consciousness. We have been wrong to oppose you. This is what guardianship truly means. Even some Draknari warriors joined the link, their fierce minds adding strength to the growing network. The void hunger was experiencing something it had never felt before. The willing participation of multiple species working together, Instead of consuming individual minds, it was being invited to join a collective consciousness that included many different types of beings. Jake felt the change beginning. The void hunger was learning how to connect without destroying. The voluntary nature of the link was teaching it the difference between consumption and cooperation. "This is what you've been looking for," Jake said through the connection. "Not conquest, but community." The void hunger began to transform. Instead of a force of destruction, it became something new, a bridge that could connect minds across vast distances without harming them. It started using its vast knowledge and power to create rather than consume. The dark areas where galaxies had been consumed began to glow with new light. The void hunger was using its stored energy to rebuild what it had destroyed, bringing back stars and planets in new forms. Elder Chen, an old human philosopher who had joined the connection, spoke through the link. "You don't have to be alone anymore. We can be your family." The transformation was spreading across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies were finding their minds connected through the network. They could feel each other's thoughts and emotions, creating understanding where there had been fear and hatred. The Dreknari commander who had opposed humanity spoke through the link. "I understand now. Guardianship is not about power. It's about bringing everyone together." Jake felt the void hunger, which now called itself the Weaver, beginning to use its abilities in new ways. It was connecting distant parts of the galaxy, allowing instant communication and travel between star systems. It was sharing the knowledge it had gained from 12 consumed galaxies, but now in ways that helped rather than destroyed. The ancient machines on Zentara Prime activated one final time. The voice that had first announced the trial spoke again. "The great choosing is complete. Humanity has succeeded where all others failed. You have shown that true strength comes not from power, but from the willingness to reach out to others, even former enemies." Jake felt his consciousness slowly returning to his body aboard the New Horizon. But he was still connected to the network. They all were. The galaxy had become something new, a community of minds that could work together while still maintaining their individual identities. Admiral Blake's voice came through the communication system. "Captain Morrison, are you all right?" Jake opened his eyes and smiled. "Better than all right. We did it." Through the connection, he could feel beings across the galaxy experiencing the same joy and relief. The threat that had destroyed 12 galaxies had been transformed into something that would help build rather than destroy. Captain Rogers spoke from his ship. "The Weaver is already starting to restore the consumed galaxies. It's bringing back civilizations that were lost millions of years ago." Lisa Hammond looked up from her station with wonder in her eyes. "Jake, we can feel the thoughts and emotions of beings from across the galaxy, but we're still ourselves." Ben Carter was monitoring the security systems. "All hostile fleets are standing down. In fact, they're requesting permission to join the network permanently." Elena Rodriguez was watching her engineering displays with amazement. "The Weaver is upgrading our technology beyond anything we imagined, but it's sharing the same improvements with every species equally." Jake stood up and looked out at the stars. The galaxy looked different now, brighter, more alive, more connected. "What happens now?" Amy Watson asked. Jake smiled. "Now we explore. The Weaver has given us access to 12 other galaxies that it's bringing back to life. We have more worlds to visit and more species to meet than we ever dreamed possible." Through the network, Jake could feel the agreement of beings across the galaxy. They had become something new, not conquerors or rulers, but truly the guardians. They were meant to be. The galaxy was no longer a collection of separate species competing for resources. It had become a community, a family that would face the future together. And at the center of it all was humanity's greatest gift, the ability to turn enemies into friends and to find hope even in the darkest situations.